All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast, hopefully your favorite Chelsea podcast out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network. Dan, one of your hosts here, alongside my good friend Sam. You might know him as CFC Central if you're on the socials, but we're going to be getting into another match preview. Chelsea with a big BIG fixture coming up this weekend against Manchester City, the team that we unfortunately drew in the first match of the season and ended up losing 2-0. But boy, oh boy, it turned around pretty quickly for Chelsea after that. And then there was a dip, but then there's potentially the crest back up to what could be a wonderful start of another great run and potentially an opportunity to do the business against Pep and his team, to take a little solace and maybe taking 1 point, maybe taking 3 points, and continuing to defend our position in the top four. Sam, I know this comes on the back of Man City playing PSG in the midweek, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But just before we get into all the specifics, before you spill all of the details, how are you feeling about this match after watching this week, after prepping for it? You do a little bit of due diligence. Are you feeling better about this match? Are you feeling the same as you were before? Or are you feeling worse?
Feeling a bit confused, to be honest. I haven't really seen Manchester City go through, a spell like this ever. And Pep hasn't had anything close to this in terms of just not knowing how to, stem the rot for a sustained amount of time in his career. So it's been quite bizarre watching them struggle through such a long period of time. But it's like it's provided some opportunities in terms of trying to exploit them. Teams that I thought wouldn't be able to take anything from them actually got against them, did pretty well, stole some points off them. And I think this is a decent time to play them. But unfortunately, it's happened that we've played them on the first day of the season when they were like super fresh after beating us in preseason quite comfortably. And then they had that entire dip, and then they had a little bit of resurgence where they picked up, I think, good results for a 6 game spell. So the PSG result is a big blip, but it does look like they sort of have a little bit of confidence back. I would have loved to face them last month when they were going through it, but um, can't complain. I think there's ample opportunity to really, really drive home the point that they won't be winning another title. So hopefully Maresca will be able to, give his former employers a little bit of grief.
Oh, look, him, Cole Palmer, and anyone else affiliated with Manchester City at any point in their career, we would love for them to have an opportunity to gloat at the end of the 90 minutes here. And in these match previews, I haven't done this before. We get into some specifics. This is the reverse fixture, so it's a little bit more of a what's changed since the last time we talked about Manchester City. We'll get into some of the strengths and weaknesses they've got going on. We'll flip the script. Sam will ask me a couple questions about what we think Maresca might do or the preparations for the game. And then, with no stakes whatsoever, make some predictions that we will absolutely make sure get clipped for social for right and make them disappear into a void if they are completely wrong. But it's more of the former usually, particularly from Sam. But we just always want to, before we do that, thank everybody who supports the podcast. You can leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's always appreciated. You can get involved on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. We post the videos there. Also, tons of Chelsea women's content on the YouTube channel as well. So you should get involved there. Obviously, with Gurma coming in, very excited times for this wonderful group of people who enjoy watching the Chelsea women's team play and are looking forward to good things ahead, and long may it continue. You also can get involved in our free weekly newsletter. Subscribe. Sam writes it. It's wonderful. And you can get involved in our Discord community for your paid capacity. And sign-up still available for our trip to London end of March, beginning of April. So all of that in the show notes, in the descriptions, depending upon where you're watching or reading the podcast. But that's going to do it for the admin out of the way very quickly, as promised. And now a bit of a look at what's going on with Manchester City. 5th in the Premier League table. It has been a long time since we've ever talked about Manchester City in a match preview or a match review, and they've been anywhere other than first, second, or at the lowest third potentially in a time frame. So this is a very odd place to be, where it's 4th place Chelsea ahead on the table taking on Manchester City in 5th place. crazy things in this, Sam, that we maybe wouldn't have predicted. That Manchester City at this point in the season, 22 matches played with both teams, that Chelsea would have had a better goal difference, would have scored the same number of goals, and would have conceded less. I think that bet would have won a fair bit of coin if you had made it at the beginning of the season, because boy, oh boy, not what any of us were anticipating. Definitely not what City fans were anticipating, because they don't have the expectation of being anywhere outside of the top 1, 2 positions on the table. They actually are probably more concerned about their season than where Chelsea fans are. We're just happy. I think we're almost a little bit happy to be here at the moment in terms of like things have progressed a little quicker, a little faster. Even with some of the blips we have, there's a lot of concerns about what's happening within the recruitment in the last 6 days of the window here. Thoughts, feelings of just this position, this timing, this matchup, this fixture, the importance really for both sides in terms of asserting themselves in this top four conversation, particularly as Arsenal has continued to be on a 5 game unbeaten streak. You have Liverpool, who continue to be performing at a high level. Forest continuing to have, 4 wins out of their last 5. Like, this is actually a more critical game than I think either side wishes it would be.
I mean, to be very honest, Dan, I did see some sort of a blip happen with City. I actually anticipated to happen last season because there were some major issues that were coming to the fore, and like always, you don't expect City to hold that long before, running to plug the holes in the boat. But just to give you an example, Dan, last night, the not last night, they whenever PSG played against City, the average age of the 11 that started was 27 years, and that's about 3.5 years older than PSG's 11. So teams around them have been getting younger, and it's also the quality of the players in there. If you look at just, um, for example, Kyle Walker, the decline has been happening for a year and a half plus. I mean, we all remember the Raheem Sterling goal where he sat down Walker to score last season. And you knew that his pace was sort of dwindling, his defending wasn't as good enough, he was making mistakes. City waited a long time before shipping him out, and it's happened to a couple of other positions as well. De Bruyne has been injured for the better part of 2 years. His quality is just staggering because he's, I think, played only 16 90s, missed a major part of the season this season, and he's still in the top 10 for creators in the Premier League in terms of chances created. But his absence is a big miss. Stones has been injured all the time. You look at Rodri, the Ballon d'Or winners, just like whenever he's left, the rot and the decline started with that. They haven't been able to find a replacement for a world class player, which is tough for any team to do. So I think when you look at the overall structure, it was coming. And I think if you don't give yourself the depth, if you don't give yourself the quality to rotate that City rely on so strongly, then this is what happens. So we're just facing them at a juncture now where confidence is low. They don't really have the right options to come off the bench. They have made signings in January. In case you've missed it, they have signed Uzbek defender Kusanov from Ligue 1. He's a very exciting prospect, although I would argue after watching him that he's not there yet. Omar Marmoush has done very, very well for Frankfurt, and he's superb in terms of goal scoring and also providing assists. He's a wide forward, but I think he's like the Alvarez replacement. And they've also got Vitor Reis from Palmeiras, one of another gem coming from Palmeiras' academy after Endrick and Estevao. So that'll be interesting to see. But they're all young guys. Then they're not, you know, game-breaking quality yet. So it'll be interesting to see how City's future looks medium term. But that's what it is. I think there are a lot of cracks that have widened into fissures, and you can get at them.
Yeah, it's very much how I think some of the past Chelsea windows have gone, right? Where we have accumulated a bunch of very promising, very talented individuals who may not have a whole lot in terms of senior football, senior minutes played at the highest level. And there's hope that the recruitment has worked very, very well and that you are bringing in talented players. But if you're looking for someone to immediately change the dynamic of the team, to alter the trajectory of where they're going to be heading this season, it feels very much as a large question mark with the looming question of, is this enough to make the difference we need in a substantive way as we head into a really 16 games left in the Premier League season for both of these teams to solidify their top four and cement Champions League again, though it does look like top five would be enough? Or are you potentially ceding ground to the individuals just below us in the table with a Bournemouth or a Newcastle who is very, very happy to take every single opportunity they have to put Manchester City, to put Chelsea, to put any of the teams in the top four under immense pressure as we get more and more difficult and congested fixture tables for clubs like Chelsea, like City, like Arsenal, who are in kind of multiple competitions.
I did listen to the mathematical segment from Nick and yourself in terms of what we need to sneak into the top
2025 is a
five, and
weird year because Nick learned to love math, and I'm really happy for him.
I don't know if he loves it as yet, but he genuinely got into it full time. I will give him that.
Maybe I'm
But yeah, I
overselling it
think
then. I apologize.
you 100% are. But um, yeah, I think trying to improve our home record is definitely on the agenda. I think when you mention that there is a certain percentage of home games you have to win, it cannot be under 50% under any circumstance if you want to compete um, for those Champions League slots. I would also say, Dan, that you have to be a flat track bully to some extent, where teams that you need to beat should be sort of swapped away as quickly as possible. And we fail to do that. A lot of our difficult results have been against teams that we should have comfortably won against. I maintain Ipswich was one of the worst results in recent memory because we just offered nothing of any significance in that game. And you cannot afford to have multiple results of that magnitude. You can afford to have one banana peel over your road to Champions League, but can't afford to have like multiple blips along the way. So hopefully that's our one for the season out. But improving the home record, essentially putting away those sides around you, especially from spot number 6 to, I would say, spot number 12, like those teams you should be able to go quite comfortably with, and we haven't done that. And another agenda, like an item on the agenda for Maresca would be to just improve the top six record. We genuinely, apart from Spurs, who I wouldn't say are top six material, you haven't really produced any result of note against the Liverpools, the Cities, the Arsenals. I think 9 out of the last 11 games we've played against City, we've lost or failed to sort of win. And even so at the Etihad, I don't know how long the winless run is at the Etihad, but it's a substantial one. So this is an opportunity to get at a slightly weakened opposition off note, and it's a statement win if you can manage to get 3 points. So hopefully, our team is sort of riled up for it and know what's at stake, because this is one of those season-defining games. If you can get a result here, no matter City's form in the past, at least knowing that you beat the champions, I think that gives you a great shot in the arm. So hopefully we're up for it.
Well, let's get into the style of play, talk about where they're getting on, and then maybe some of the weaknesses that they have. But we'll do that after a quick break. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Okay, Sam. So we want to talk about the decline question mark of Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, maybe where they have been a little lacking of late in terms of the same type of ruthless identity that they've had previously, where they're finding life to be a little bit more pedestrian at times, I think, than what the heights of the recent run that we've seen from this Manchester City side, where it feels like they walk out to the pitch and they have scheduled a win within a certain period of time and then can take their foot off the gas. Not your Manchester City of the past couple of years.
Absolutely. And I think before we go into the weaknesses and try to analyze where the faults are, it's quite important to take what their game plan is and why it isn't working. So, Maresca is a pupil, I would say, sort of like holds Pep in a very high regard, almost sees him as a mentor in terms of his one of his inspirations for his game model. So what you can expect from City are quite similar principles. So obviously they're top of the league for possession. They usually are every single year. And he tends to stick to his game plan whenever he's charted out a plan A. It's just plan A. He doesn't divulge any other details, or he doesn't go into sort of different means to try and break a team down. He oddly did make a couple of tweaks against PSG, but that's a super rare thing for him to do. But if you look at their general state of play, it's a 4-2-3-1. It's been a little tough to do the same sort of things with Rodri sort of injured for the long term. But in general, if you look at their setup, it's either a box midfield or a diamond midfield, and both those midfields allow you to dominate the center with four players. So that's what they try to do. And the moment you're able to play through the press, or you're trying to play centrally, then you free up the wingers on the side. And when you've got somebody like a Jeremy Doku, then you've got somebody like a Savinho, who's also been, in my opinion, quite good for his first season. Then you can create a lot of opportunities 1v1. And that's going to be, I think, on their agenda. Doku is, I think, picked up an injury. I'm not sure whether he's fit, but in general, they will try to utilize those wide areas. And what I think makes them different from us is they've got Erling Haaland in the middle. And even in, I think, his a personally tough spell for him, he's still on 17 goals. So that just tells you just how brutal he is in terms of like a finisher and what he can give you inside the box. Um, Another thing that I would love to sort of highlight is that they're exceptional from set pieces, Dan, attacking and defensive ones. Attacking ones, their output hasn't been as good, which I would say is maybe led to a little bit of an issue, because I think they've only scored what, 5 goals this season from set pieces or corners combined. But they've only let in two in defensive situations. So I think that's definitely like a big difference for them. But you have to be careful when you come into set pieces situations. I think we've been good in that regard. So hopefully we'll be able to sort of dent those two aspects of their play and keep the game as close as possible.
Yeah, very, very, I think important too. And I know that, maybe there are kind of other players, or, I think we've seen some who have fallen out. I mean, I think like Phil Foden was non-existent, and then maybe just right on schedule, getting ready to play against Chelsea, has reappeared again with some form. And I know you mentioned, Holland too, around just his poor season. And when a poor season has over double digit goals and is cresting towards a very cool and easy 20 between now and the end of the season, feels like, I know the expectations are skewed for him. That's a very interesting poor season type of metric that we would kind of put out there.
And tell me about it. And everybody like on cue picks up their best shoes to dance in the moment they see like Chelsea's on the fixture list. So I don't expect anything less than the best Foden we've ever seen and the best Haaland we've ever seen ending up, taking the stage against us. But like you rightly said, endured, I would say, the toughest 4 months of his career, from a personal perspective. And he's got what, 8 goals and 2 assists, or 6 goals and 2 assists in his last 8 games. So that's been quite the return for him. Didn't get anything against PSG on the right hand side, but will be interesting to see how he comes to play against us. Haaland, like you mentioned, double digits, 17 goals, quite comfortably, just a lethal weapon. But if you look at the City's side of this one compared to the ones of late, where they had some significant wide scorers, then they had somebody like a Leroy Sané, they had Mahrez, they had Sterling at his peak. There used to be at least 10 goals or like 5 assists, so 15 goal contributions coming from the wide players. They've missed that this time around. So if you look at their goal contributions now, 23 of their 43 have come through Haaland or Foden. So if you have to blunt that threat, you know exactly where to look. While in the city sides of past, you would have to stop Mahrez, you would have to stop Sterling, you would have to stop Aguero, and all three of them would switch from time to time to different positions, drop, drift. So it was quite a tough attack to handle. But that's not to say that they've been poor this time around. If you look at their metrics, Dan, they're again the best in the league. They've got the best metrics in attack and creativity. They're top for shots taken. They're top for chances created. They've almost scored as many goals as us. I think they're one short. And it just goes to show that even without those dangerous players, they are still creating those big opportunities. So you have to be careful and control the chaos because City tend to exploit that to the highest degree. So don't let the dangerous players come into situations where you might regret it later. And hopefully you'll be able to take something away from the game, which is 3 points, because I think this is an opportunity to make the right impact. And if you can take 3 points, you should be trying to do all you can to do it. Even if it comes at the cost of a loss, I think you should be going for it.
Yeah, it does feel like a nothing ventured, nothing gained type of opportunity for this team. And I think if you're looking for a chance, if you're looking for a fixture, I mean, Chelsea have not won a game against Manchester City since the Champions League final in 2021. Like you'd be hard pressed as as a Enzo Maresca manager for Chelsea Football Club to do something better for the supporters over the next 7 days than to win against Manchester City to break this run. That was a run of also 3 games in a row within a month and a half time frame where Chelsea won competitively in the FA Cup, the Premier League, and the Champions League. It would be really, really nice to restore order here. And I know that brings up then there are a couple weaknesses that you would expect Maresca and this Chelsea team to be able to take advantage of because, again, not the Manchester City that we are used to, Manchester City that can be beaten, that has struggled in some of the competitions they've been in this season, and is more human than they would like to admit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are certain aspects that leave them vulnerable, and like I said again, it's quite uncharacteristic to be in a position where you can see obvious flaws in the City game plan. So the idea would be to just go in and try to execute it to the best degree possible. I think that's what probably would lead you into the place that you want to be. And like you mentioned, if you don't take the risk, then you're not going to gain anything. It's just probably like the best opportunity since that Champions League final to make a dent. City, for instance, also set a pretty bad record for themselves. They first time I think in 4 years that they've dropped points after being 2 goals up. Like they actually lost, but the last time it happened was against Brighton in 2021. So these are all things you look at and you say, okay, this is not Manchester City. This is a completely different outfit. The aura of invincibility that inevitably somehow lifted them out of dire situations to the brink of victory. It's sort of worn away. It's dulled a little. So you should be smelling blood. And like I said, if the headline says Chelsea beat Manchester City, then imagine the lift that it gets to every single player. And that's what you should be asking from our side. You know, we all know that after our sort of dip, every Chelsea fan is saying, "Oh my God, this is going to be another loss." You have to flip the script. You genuinely have to go out and play like 1 point isn't going to be enough, and hopefully you can take away all three. I know it sounds like pretty pompous for me to say that, but I genuinely believe, Dan, that you can go and with the weaknesses that you have with the City outfit, you can hurt them. It could be another 4-4 for all I know. We'll get that into the predictions bit, but you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should be trying to make as much damage as possible.
Well, that's what we would hope we would do. I mean, there's definitely, I think, opportunity to take advantage of this team to get them on a bad day. I mean, again, several players who played in the midweek are going to be maybe a little tired after Manchester City had to go and really struggle in their most recent match here. I mean, again, the 4-2 loss, and you think about the fact that they did play an older side, but like, they played Kevin De Bruyne, they played Silva, they played Foden. Like some of those players played the full 90 minutes. And so they are not going to be maybe as fresh of a side. And, this is coming out before Maresca's press conference. So we don't necessarily know if there are other players injured or available or unavailable on the Chelsea side of this. But, you do think that the extra rest, the no need for travel, even though Paris to Manchester City is not the most extensive travel that you would have to do, does give potentially a bit of a fitness edge when we've also been concerned about Chelsea's maybe lack of conditioning over the last sort of matches too. So, it feels good or at least reassuring that we've had a couple of weaknesses to talk about, because I feel like in the past couple of seasons when we talked about Manchester City and weaknesses in these preview pods, it was not a long list. It was a very short list of things that we could point to as how a team could get at Manchester City. And so that feels nice. It feels refreshing. You've given me hope and optimism as we kind of will eventually get into the predictions here.
I mean, they're simple, but they're substantial. So I'll leave it at that. I think when you look at those 3 points, you can say that there are a pretty broad range of weaknesses. It's not something extremely specific that you have to target, which I think makes our game plan that much simpler, saying this is exactly what you need to do. So we're probably going to start with just the more obvious aspects of it. I think mentally they do look off. uh, we can argue whether it's regarding physical issues, considering they've got a very old core now. If you look at their midfield, it's Bernardo Silva, it's Mateo Kovacic, it's Kevin De Bruyne. They're all like 30 plus. So the legs aren't there. Genuinely, it does feel like it in the latter stages of games that the pressing isn't as good as it used to be. There's a lot of trail off in terms of certain points in the games where the energy levels just dip. Even after spells of intensity, especially against PSG, who put their foot on the accelerator and basically like kept them on the back foot, you could see that City was sort of struggling to keep up in certain spells, which hasn't had sort of happened before. But when we talk about just being out of the ordinary, Dan, Opta says that they've now dropped points from a winning position 9 times this season, which is more than any Premier League team in 24-25. So it's quite an alarming statistic from their perspective. It just tells you that even if you go down against Manchester City, there's always hope for you to bounce back, which is why I said you have to go out there and absolutely go all guns blazing. You can't afford to say that, we'll take a point away, because you have to capitalize on this fragility in the City outfit. The second one I'll probably say, Dan, is something tactical but supremely crucial to City's game plan. They tend to even Pep has sort of adapted his entire rest defense, and he's adapted his entire structure in defense to have these tall individuals, mostly like center back profiles, to be able to win the second ball. So if you look at their conventional back line that they played against, say, Inter Milan in the Champions League final, it was what, four players who've played centre backs, Rodri included. You have Guardiola in there, you have Akanji in there, you've got Stones in there. All of these guys are very, very adept at winning the ball back in those situations, making sure they know where to sort of intercept and recover and recycle possession. So, to give you a little bit of context there, Ballon d'Or winner Rodri features in the top five for recoveries every single season. He was second in the league last season. This season, City's first player for recoveries is 59th in the league, and that's Manuel Akanji. So they've genuinely struggled in that particular zone when they're keeping the ball and they're trying to recycle it. They haven't been able to because there's no Rodri. And Kovacic and Bernardo Silva, with their height and physical stature and their aging legs, are not going to be able to give you that amount of dominance in the attacking third. So I think that's something that you have to exploit, especially when you have somebody like a Moises Caicedo, who coincidentally is now second in the league for second balls and recoveries. So if you get him to win one of those balls in that area, then I think you can start a fire. You can generally do something great with your transitions and counter attack. So I think that's going to be an interesting battle for me, Dan. Like if you're able to provide any kind of second ball in those situations, then you will damage them. And the third is something correlated to the second factor, which is City are trying to still play a high line. They're still trying to like press and win the ball back in advanced situations, but the defense doesn't look like it can cope. There's an incredible amount of space between the four defenders who are trying to basically keep some sort of a compact shape. There's a lot of space in between players for you to make runs into, and there's also just a lack of speed and urgency. So I've seen like marking issues, I've seen positional issues. Josco Guardiola in particular being one guy who's sort of prone to making lapses in judgment. There's also like 1v1 issues. If you can get somebody like a Madueke or a Neto 1v1 against Guardiola, I think you can definitely do a lot of damage. Against PSG, coincidentally, they played Matheus Nunes, who's a midfielder at right back. So if that happens again, then you definitely have to get your left finger also on his case and try to isolate it as soon as possible. Some of the things that PSG did, we obviously can't really emulate because they went with a false nine in Kang and Lee, and they switched around their front three a lot. We're not really a side that switches wingers, positions, and sides, and a centre forward is sort of staying more central this season. But what they did very well was they tried to overload one side and then they quickly switched it to Bakula on the other side, or they went from the left to the right hand side and tried to get those 1v1s and created a lot of issues. So if you're able to do that for your wingers against these wide defenses, even if you're able to go like over the top very quickly for Nico Jackson against one of the centre backs, Yakanji, I think you could be in business then. I think you can definitely do something that you did against Brighton, where their high line just struggled to cope all day long. So it is quite the ideal game for our attack. I think you will have ample space to exploit. It's just a matter of how well can you exploit it and whether Nico Jackson can finish at the end of it. I really hope this is the game where he turns around the form book and like tears it away, because this is one of those games that I believe he will quite enjoy.
Be a good opportunity as a resume builder and a opportunity to, again, if you're the first striker in a very long time to help us win a game against Manchester City, would do great for making sure that everyone is all feeling the same way about the player at the end of the 90 minutes. But look, we're going to get our last ad break out of the way when we come back. A couple questions for Sam, for me, about the preparations of this game and some decisions that maybe Maresco will make, and then we'll get our predictions on the record too. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Okay, Sam, your turn. For those who maybe listened for the first time, this is where your opportunity to ask me a couple questions and I try to come up with what I think maybe happens, or maybe also give you the preference on what I think should happen, because they don't always align.
Fair enough. I think the first question I would like to ask you is, considering or sort of expecting that Levi Colville is fit, who do you drop to the bench? Are you going to drop the goal scoring Tosin, or are you going to drop cult hero Trevor Chalobah? Or would you keep both of those guys and sort of give Levi Colville a little bit of, headspace to get back into the game?
Oh man, that's a tough one right off the bat. My big concern for Levi coming in out of the cold is just how is he from a fitness perspective? Is he fully fit? Are we potentially rushing him back a little bit? We do have several more matches. We do thankfully have a bit of a break between now and get a Manchester City match on the Saturday, and then playing, again, not for over another week until we play West Ham on the 3rd. But then we do have that quick turn FA Cup against Bournemouth, Brighton, and then Brighton again on the 14th, and then Villa. So like we start to see some of those like, packed kind of scheduling happening. So, you know, you could argue that over a week is enough time to rest, where if you feel like you're going to get it, but like you don't sub center backs often. Like that's not the first player you're looking to impact off the pitch. So like I think there's the knock on effect where it's like, well, are you going to play Levi for 60 minutes? If he's only fit for 60 minutes, I feel like he kind of needs to be closer to being fit for the full 90 minutes. So if he isn't, and there's an injury risk opportunity, I would just stick with the Trev Chalobah and Tosin experience. Um, I think with the way that that Chalobah played on in the last match, and obviously Wolves are not a superior side in any way, shape, or form, but the way that Chalobah was bodying Larson, would make me feel a little bit more comfortable to see some of that against Erling Haaland, to have him in the center back capacity here. So I feel like if Levi comes in, I'm dropping Tosin and I'm keeping Chalba on the lineup.
And that's a very, very ambitious call. And I don't think anybody would complain against it, Dan. Trev is just the feel good factor at this point. He's also
Sure.
performed, I think, in his first game back. So why not give everybody a good lift and have him in there when you want leadership and when you want a little bit of guidance? Obviously, we talked about set pieces as well. So if you've got somebody like a Tosin in there, who's arguably, I think, better in the air than a lot of other defenders that we have, then maybe there's an upside to that as well. So I think that's a very good answer. The second one, okay, let's go with the point that I said about City's wide defenders being, I think, vulnerable at this point in time. So who do you choose as your wing bearing on the left and the right hand side?
Oh man. So I feel like this game is guiding towards an idea that Chelsea will play, obviously Nico up top, Cole behind in his free roll from a 10 spot. And then I feel like Madueke probably starts on the right hand side of the attack. And then we saw Neto start against Wolves. I wonder if Jaden Sancho gets the start ahead of him, though. I just, the opportunity to leave a mark in Manchester might be a something that he would like to do. If I don't know, I have a feeling. It's not necessarily that one is necessarily performing that much better than the other. I mean, I think that we point to our wingers as maybe needing or having some opportunity to play better than they are currently and to contribute more. I mean, when we have center backs scoring more, contributing more in attack than our wingers are doing, there's a lot of concerns, and so I feel as if it's a Madueke on the right to start. It's Cole Palmer, Nico Jackson up top centrally, and then I think Jaden Sanchez is going to start. That's this. It's just a belief thing, not necessarily a reason why or reason against.
I mean, I think the reason is like you start Bitter City Academy graduates against Manchester City and hope that some of that vengeance comes out. I mean, you've got Tosin at centre back. If you had Romeo Lavia, I'm pretty sure you would have thrown him on in midfield as well. But yeah, Sancho on the left hand side, Palmer there in the middle. So you've got four. And yeah, if Minor Kittens ends up coming in the summer, then you've probably got half your team made of City graduates. But not the worst idea, Dan.
I mean, is that what you would do? Do you feel as if that is the exact same one that you would go with, or do you feel as if you would do a different setup?
No, I mean, I'm with you in terms of agreement. I would say like out of all the wingers, probably Jadon Sancho looks like he's emerged as the more definitive choice, the more reliable choice. He again doesn't give you the amount of shots that I want from a winger, but he does offer you something different. He offers you a very possession secure profile. He's very good at keeping the ball. He also tries to find you regularly in the box. He's also like he's racking up the assists. Let's just add there. So I think he's definitely becoming like quickly becoming my number one go-to on in the sheet for wingers. On the right, again, I think Madueke does offer you a little bit of directness that you would like against Guardiola, but so does Neto. It's just execution has been off. Even Maresca after the game sort of complained, saying after the goal, Madueke stopped playing. I generally think there's some attitude issue that Maresca is trying to correct with Madueke because he plays him one game and then he's left out for a technical decision and then he doesn't bring him on, basically keeps him on the bench. So does look like Madueke isn't being as good as Maresca wants him to be, and that's a pity because I did say this, but like if I had to put a bet on who Liverpool would be looking at to sort of replace Salah in terms of numbers or the aggregate, then Madueke is a very, very good choice in terms of just how much he gets into the box, just how well he's able to get shots away. He racks up like 4.5, 5 shots a game on average, which is really, really good. It's just most of his shots just cannon off somebody's foot. So he needs to improve that. He needs to offer some sort of an upgrade on his final product. right foot needs to be significantly better than it is right now. But other than that, I think he's offering pretty good things going up front. I think his defensive abilities have dropped a little bit, which is probably the only reason why I would see Neto starting on the right because he works harder going both ways. So I do think it could be the same iteration as you. It could be Madueke, but I wouldn't be surprised if Neto and Sancho start as the wing pairing.
All right, well, things to see and consider when the lineups drop. Were we right? Were we incorrect? Who knows? But maybe we'll make some bold predictions here, and hopefully those are correct because typically we make some ones that are in Chelsea's favor, and we always like to see those type of things come true. What do you got?
Oh my God. So are you giving me like just the scoreline predictions, or do you want me to go bold somewhere?
You can go with any type of prediction you like to make. If you'd like to make just a results based prediction, you can do that. If you want to get specific on a scoreline, you're more than welcome to. And if you just want to throw out a off the wall confidence prediction, you're more than welcome to do that too.
Oh my God. Well, again, I'm split between what is pragmatic and what I really want to see happen. But yeah, my head is saying it's going to be a 3-3 draw. I think it's going to be a high score,
Wow.
like a 2-2 or a 3-3 draw. Yeah. But like heart says, you should genuinely bet on a Chelsea win. So I'd go 2-1 or 3-2 Chelsea. What about you? Do you got a scoreline in mind?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think your prediction on that, like we would need to score a substantial amount of goals to win this game. Like I think like 3-2 is probably like just
Hmm.
as accurate as like a two, a 2-1 or a 4-4 or a 4-3. So I think maybe that like there's more than four or more goals get scored in this game is probably like I think a place to be. And then I mean, I don't think I can say Nico Brace again. Like that's just probably not the comfort space I want to be in. Multiple match preview predictions in a row. I think the interesting one is if I feel like I would be very open for like a Mark Cucurella full experience. Like we get him with a challenge that could have been way more seriously officiated that he walks away from. Whether it's a like orange that should have been a red or something that should have been a yellow that he gets away with, and we feel pretty good about it. But then he also contributes with some attacking element, and that would mean a goal because he's not really a heavy assister. I would love to see Mark Cucurella with a goal because that also has a City narrative as well. It has the he
Hmm.
ended up at Chelsea instead of City. So in addition to the easy ones to predict, like Cole Palmer gets a goal, like a Cole Palmer penalty would be fantastic in this game. Would love that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like Cole Palmer penalty, Mark Cucurella full experience, and a Chelsea win with a over 4 goals scored in the game. That's what I'm going to go with.
I think that's like a brilliant production. So I would definitely agree with a couple of those stakes. And if I had to sort of put money on it, I would generously put a tenner or a 20 on one of those things happening. Especially I think one to do with like the Cole Palmer penalty. He enjoyed the one that he scored in that magnificent draw. So I'm hoping that he reignites his form again. I think he struggled a little bit from the knock that he had on his ankle. Did look a little out of sorts last game, but yeah, I mean, he's our talisman. The moment he comes alive, then everybody else around him also plays better. So that's a good thing. For me, the ambitious prediction would be like a goal comes from Caicedo winning something in the middle third. I think he wins a ball and he starts either a transition or he plays a ball over the top that leads to a goal. So Caicedo sort of doing the opposite end of the business and helping us score is my prediction.
Well, we would love that one too. Again, if some of our Brighton boys get the business done, that would be quite wonderful. But look, those are some predictions. We talked about the strengths and weaknesses of Manchester City. We got into where we think maybe the lineup is going to look like from a back line and front line, and gave you some fun, hopefully along the way. But that's going to do it for this episode. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget you can get involved in all of our wonderful ways. Support the podcast through wonderful reviews, get involved on YouTube, sign up for the newsletter, join us in London if you'd like to get on the trip. All that information is in the show notes, but we will be live after the Manchester City match. Win, lose or draw. But as we are saying here, we think there is at least confidence enough to go with a win. So we will see you after Chelsea win on our live stream. Fingers crossed. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.